Okay, I've done the masking on the canopy. These are dollar store magnifying glasses. I actually have one of these things. Works well for working on small things, but you have to have the part exactly a certain distance away from them. With the dollar store reading glasses, I don't need to have the part very far away. I have them because this canopy is a little bit bigger than my thumbnail. Okay, it's not very big. You can see some of the masking fluid is still drying on it. What I have here is a pin vise with a needle in it. I use the head of the needle as my paintbrush for putting the masking fluid on the canopy. Worked really well. Okay, I don't like using paintbrushes on masking fluid because it's harder than crud to get it out of the paintbrush. You just got to use a cheap paintbrush to get it out with. So the masking fluid I'm using is this stuff. Got it at my big box hobby shop for like $3. There's more in that bottle than I ever use, except for I didn't put the lid on it very well last time and it's half dried out. That actually made it easier to work with, believe it or not. The bad part is this stuff dries clear. Can't see it on one side of the canopy anymore. Okay? And makes me think I didn't put it on there, but I know I did. Well, quick update on that. Again, stuck a needle in a pin vise backwards, used the head of the needle as my paintbrush, put the masking fluid on the canopy. The canopy is so small that I couldn't do this with a brush, and I'd go nuts trying to fidget the little tiny pieces of tape on there. So I'm just using masking fluid. I won't use masking fluid for large surfaces because you got to paint the stuff on, and while you're painting extra on, the other part peels off when the brush hits it. So I only use it on small things. There you go. If any of you use the masking fluid on large surfaces, leave it in a comment so we can share it for everyone. Thanks. Found another problem with the kit. There's these rings that go around the base of the engine right here. And here. Right here. My problem with the rings was this. They have a notch they're supposed to fit on. And well, that notch doesn't work well with the kit. In other words, I had to cut the notch off one of these rings in order to get it to line up and seat properly all the way down. Another thing that doesn't have me very happy with this kit, let me zoom in, hopefully the camera will cooperate on this. It doesn't like to focus on this black model very well. But it is. Right here at the base of the wing we have this pin. This pin sticks up pretty far. You can see there's another one there. The seam for the body is very near the edge and running along here, which hides fairly well, actually. Okay? The problem where it doesn't hide well is on the edge of the kit, and my camera's having a hard time deciding where to focus. It's on this edge right here by the engine nacelles. That's where we have the biggest problem with it. I'm going to give it a try to fix that, possibly. I may not, because again, I'm building this kit more for paint practice than anything. You know, I've spent 15 minutes and I'm almost done putting it together. I just have 4 parts left to put on the kit and it's done. So this model is not about you know, being technically correct on it and doing a wonderful, fabulous job. It's more about trying to get some paint work done. So I may or may not mess with those spots on this model. I'm just giving everyone a heads up where the problems with it are, in case someone wants to take it and try to make it look beautiful. It's a seam along there, and they're all raised panel lines. All along here, they're all raised panel lines, which means when you go to fix those seams, you're going to have some problems with the panel lines, because they will disappear when you do some sanding. Well, I'll be back with the next round. I'm doing seam filling. I'm not going to do a lot of hardcore seam filling on this model. I'm doing this mainly for paint. I want to make it look halfway decent, presentable. One of the good things about this model is the top side of the model, 0 seams. So it's going to look good from the top, no matter what you do. Bottom side's where all the seams are. Now I have been doing some seam filling. I'm going to come in here and show you guys what I'm doing. I've done this before. I did this with the Thunderchild. And this is how I'm doing the seams on the NX. Okay, you can see it. Let me zoom in close. Now I did try some different techniques on this. Some of the techniques I did not like. Mainly, I got out some Mr. Surfacer. I didn't know what I was doing with this stuff. It's not for this kind of seam. I'm going to say that. What I'm doing instead is I'm taking this stuff. Oops, don't beat things up. This stuff right here, Squadron white putty. A lot of you guys don't like this stuff. Don't like it at all. I have learned how to work with it, so I like it. And what I'm doing with this stuff is acetone-based fingernail polish remover. I take the Squadrons, dunk it in the fingernail polish remover. That softens it, and it gives it just enough acetone mixed with the putty to soften it. And the fingernail polish remover it's thinner. So I'm thinning it down a little bit, making it more like Play-Doh instead of this hard, rocky, clumpy stuff that comes out of the tube. I smear it on, then I take a Q-tip, dunk it in the acetone, and spread it along there and thin it out completely. Okay? And that's what gives me the seam lines you guys are seeing. So I'm going to show you how this works real quick. Here we go. I'm going to give you guys a show of what I do to fill my seams. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit on the area I'm working on. There we go. Now, what we have here, right here, is a bottle cap. That bottle cap is full of acetone. I use bottle caps because they're disposable. What I mean by that is I get myself a nice frosty beverage, adult beverage preferable, and when you take the lid off the beverage, you, instead of just throwing it away, can use it to hold things like paint, glue, whatever. I use this to mix paint in for hand brushing and various other things. Well, I got my stuff dunked in the acetone. I'm smearing it into the crack where the seam is. It's going to look pretty ugly at the start, but that's okay. I'm getting it liberally smeared in there. Now, one of the beauties of using acetone as a thinner is this stuff dries up pretty fast. I could literally put paint on this within an hour because this stuff's going to be dry within an hour. I think that's probably why Squadron uses this particular form of putty. Okay. I've heard other people complain about this stuff because they say it shrinks as it cures. I've never experienced that. I've never had that sort of problem with this stuff. So maybe it's using the acetone in conjunction with this putty that prevents that. And I just used the toothpick to press the putty down in the joint. That's all I do, is I use the toothpick to push the putty down in the joint. Sometimes I'll lose it in the acetone bath. Okay. And that starts filling in the lines just real well. One of the problems about using the colored toothpicks is the acetone bleeds the color off the toothpicks. But we can't have it all. That cleans up in a minute anyhow. Well, I'm about a third the way done with that seam, believe it or not. Yeah, I'd say about a third. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a Q-tip, dunking it in the acetone, and using it to help smear this down a little bit better. get it in the seam a bit better. It also removes the extra putty from where I don't want it. Now, clean it up a tad bit better than what I've got here. Doesn't require that much. So I have the piece of paper towel sitting here. I take the piece of paper towel, reuse that corner, let me get a corner I haven't used, and bend it around my finger like this, dunk it in the acetone, and then wipe on the model. That gets any extra off. And what you end up with is a very neatly filled seam. And let's zoom in on this so you can see it better. What you end up with is a neatly filled seam that requires almost no sanding to finish. And I do mean almost no sanding. I'm going to go over that with a very light, like 600 grit sandpaper, just to get it smoothed out a teeny bit more. And again, you can see from some of the areas I've done that there is almost no extra seam fill along there. And for some of you, that probably looks like your seam fill after you're done sanding. So that's why I do the seam fill this way. Okay? I'll be back when the seam filling is done and the model is completed and ready for paint.